All right, everyone, we will go ahead and kick this off. Welcome. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be with us, and welcome to our May virtual user groups with our topics around cloud and containers. We've got a great agenda lined up for you today, lots of great information. We've got a couple of new faces on the line that you guys might not be familiar with yet. We have Sachin Sanchetti, and we also have Pranay Shah. They are part of our product division, so they will be presenting for you guys today, and they've got a lot of great material. So without further ado, we're going to dive right in. I have a couple of things to update you guys on, and then I'll turn it over and they will begin their presentation. Just as a reminder, a couple of housekeeping. We are recording this session, so you will receive a copy of the recording probably by tomorrow. Give me about 24 hours. It will also be posted on ibi.com under the resource section. If you have any questions for our presenters during their time, please submit those through the Q&A. We will be monitoring that. Angie Hildak is on the line with us today as well. She'll be taking some Q&A and helping us with that too. So please submit those questions through the Q&A feature, and we'll make sure that the presenters get those answered. All right, let me switch over here for a second and share a couple of updates with you guys around some resources. All right, as I mentioned, we have Sachin and Pranay today talking about cloud and container. We did our North America session yesterday. It was successful. It was great. So we hope you guys also find the value from it today as well. Just as a reminder, IBI is back. We are a business unit of our parent company, Cloud Software Group. So all IBI related products, solutions, branding, it is all back. So you will be hearing us referring to IBI going forward. This is separate from TIBCO. So yes, we are our own business unit back under the Cloud Software Group umbrella. This includes our own events, our own products, our own solution, our own everything, kind of everything that we used to have back from the old IBI days. So just be on the lookout for that as you hear that messaging come forward a lot more going forward. IBI.com, this is where we want you guys to be heading. We are no longer putting stuff on tibco.com. So please do not be referencing tibco.com if you're looking for IBI related material. All of it is being posted on IBI.com. All of our products, our solutions, our customer stories, all are being on the new website. We are under the resource section. That is where we are posting any of the user groups, the recordings, the Focus Friday recordings, any other past webinars that we have done. Those will all be now on IBI.com under the resource section. Any upcoming events such as virtual user groups, in-person user groups, summits, Focus Fridays, other webinars will all be posted under the events section on IBI.com. So IBI.com is your new best friend of all things IBI. You can also access support through IBI.com. It is at the bottom of the page, and that will take you, to the support site where you will be able to submit your tickets and put in your support request. Some things that we're still working on. We are, constantly adding some new documentation around our products and solutions. So that's coming soon. We are also putting together and working on some education and training information. This includes how-to videos, documentation, things like that, from your different skill levels, from being a beginner to a more advanced user of our products. So we're working on putting a lot of that together for you guys, and that is coming very soon. And also the community. We will have a link directly from here to the community that will take you over there if you're not a part of the TIBCO community. So as I mentioned, under the events page, this is where you'll find all the upcoming webinars, whether it's a Focus Friday, it's a user group, if we're doing Summit, which we are looking at doing in 2024. So we will have more information about that coming soon. But this is where you can find all of the events that are coming up. And then I mentioned the TIBCO community. So yes, we are still on, not to give you whiplash, we are still on the TIBCO community. This is our platform that we are on. But within the TIBCO community, we are our own portal of WebFOCUS and IBI, as well as iWay too. So once you get to the TIBCO community homepage, you will go through the WebFOCUS portal, and that will take you to all things IBI. If you're not a member yet, very simple. Up there in the right-hand corner, you can just click to log in or register. If you were a part of our old IBI community, My IBI, you would use your login information from that one, and it should set you up just fine. If you have any issues with this, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Happy to get this set up for you. But we'd love for you guys to join the community where all your fellow users are. And then, as I mentioned, within that community is the WebFOCUS portal. So here you can go and, engage with your fellow community members. You can click on the discussions and go through questions posted by the community. This is very similar to kind of what Focal Point was. So you guys can interact there and engage with your fellow members and ask those questions. And then our team also will start having more engagement from IBI in there, so that you'll start seeing some of those conversations really, come to life. New articles, new content, new threads will be posted too. So if you're not a member, head out and join the community. We also have 2 groups that are within the community. One is a user group, and one is a Focus Friday group. These are also available for you to join, just kind of a more smaller, intimate group. Within the user group, I remind you guys of upcoming user groups that are going on to register. We take polls, we do surveys. You guys interact with each other quite a bit in there as well. And then the Focus Fridays are with the Walters and Mark. Within their group, you will be able to find recordings and presentations, things like that, interact with those guys if you have questions or want to know a little bit more about their topics or what they're discussing for that month, excuse me. So if you're out in the community, join the 2 groups so you'll be a part of those. And then getting social with us, we love to have you guys follow and subscribe to all of our social channels. We have our LinkedIn, Twitter, and our new YouTube channel. I think most of you guys probably already follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter, so thank you for that. But if you have not subscribed to our new YouTube channel, I highly encourage you to. This is different from the old YouTube channel that we used to have under IBI. So this is a brand new channel. So when we send out this presentation, if you will click this link, it will take you to the new channel, and you can subscribe so you're getting those updates. This is also where we will be posting some training and how-to videos. We also post the recordings to these out there as well. So just make sure you're subscribing to the new YouTube channel. The Tech Refresh program, just as a reminder for anyone who is interested or thinking about upgrading to WebFOCUS 9, we have this lovely 3-stage process that is effective, fast, and pain-free to get you guys moved and upgraded to the latest release of WebFOCUS. Dan Ortolani's team is our gurus behind this program. If you guys are interested in what it entails, what it looks like for your organization, if you would just mark that on your evaluation form, and Dan's team will get in touch with you. You can also visit ibi.com /WebFOCUS Technology Refresh Program if you'd like to get some more information. But for any of you guys who are thinking about upgrading, definitely look into this program so that it will be a very easy and pain-free upgrade for you. The TIBCO Academy, we do have a couple of self-paced e-learning courses out there around WebFOCUS 9, some foundations, and then operations and things like that. So if you guys are interested in learning a new skill or just advancing your skills, you can definitely check some of those out right now. And again, more is coming. This is something that our team is actively working on. We've heard from many of you guys that y'all want more training, you need more education. So our team is working diligently to get all of that together for you guys. And that is all I had for you. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Sachin to begin his presentation. At the end of the meeting, as usual, I will send a link to the evaluation form. So if you guys wouldn't mind taking a moment to fill that out for me, your feedback's greatly appreciated. And on that note, Sachin, I will turn it over to you, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Shay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining in. As Shay said, we are not a familiar faces in the webinar. We are doing it for the first time. So let me introduce myself. I'm Sachin Sancheti. I'm product manager at IBI. I've been in the industry for about 13 years and with TIBCO, IBI, and Cloud Software Group for about 7 years. I look after cloud and container side of IBI WebFOCUS. So let's get started with the webinar. So these are pretty standard confidentiality disclaimer and about IBI slides. So I'll skip it and turn it to agenda. So for today, agenda, first topic is cloud market trends. We'll explore how the landscape is, and I will discuss the emerging trends that are shaping in the industry. We'll talk about how organizations are leveraging these trends to drive their digital transformation. Next, I'll talk about how IBA offers comprehensive solution for these emerging trends, and I'll highlight the key features and benefits of IBA cloud solutions. As a comprehensive solution, first we'll have a managed cloud offering. So I'll talk about how it helps, how it supports end-to-end, and what are the features of it. And then I'll talk about the next exciting offering, that is WebFOCUS Container Edition. Again, I'll discuss high-level features and how it can be your go-to option if you're looking for self-hosted solution. And then we'll talk about supporting utility, that is WebFOCUS Health Check tool and its features. And lastly, I'll talk about, or I'll walk you through the Container Edition journey so far. And lastly, we can take questions, but feel free to type in your question in between the presentation if you have any. So without further ado, let's get started. So before we dive into the market trends, let's see how cloud computing came into the picture, how that concept is coined, right? So it can be traced back to 1915 when development of mainframe computers was in progress, and the concept of time sharing, which allowed multiple users to access a single computer simultaneously. So then that cloud computing concept came into picture. But it started becoming popular in 2000, early 2000, and it becomes a milestone or a keyword once Amazon introduced their Amazon Web Services. They launched their Elastic Compute Cloud EC2 services, and it started becoming a norm in the industry, right? And then major players such as Google, they introduced GCP, then Microsoft came up with Azure, and in subsequent years, and it becomes the go-to platform for everyone, right? And they started offering services like infrastructure, a platform as a service, and even software as a service. And it started gaining or getting popular, right? And due to COVID-19, it got more popular. 90% of respondents stated that cloud usage is higher than initially planned, and organizations started accelerating their migration to the cloud. And because of that, industry is seeing almost 60% of CHR growth, and it is expected to grow by 16% till 2028. And because of that, cloud is not just become is beyond basic infrastructure. Now it has become there are multiple trends like multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, right? Literally 92% are adopting multi-cloud strategy, and 82% are adapting to the hybrid strategy. They are leveraging a combination of public, private, and even on-premise infrastructure. So these kind of new strategies provide flexibility, data security, and ability to choose the best cloud services from multiple providers. So with this, cloud platform has become integral part of IT infrastructure, and there is a shift towards it, right? And because of this shift, companies or businesses are able to save their cost of ownership by 40%. So this sounds really great, good, right? But everything is not hunky-dory. There are its own challenges. So enterprises are wasting their 30% of cloud budget because of reasons such as over provisioning, where they provision resources more than what they needed, and they are just paying for it, right? There is another reason is idle resources. Again, they have provision more resources, and there is a lack of monitoring and analysis tools. So they are not aware that they are wasting, or their resources are idle, right? And they are wasting that budget there. So all of this need lots of, so to optimize your budget or optimize your performance, you need lots of combination of proper resource planning, continuous monitoring, optimization strategy, and effective cost management practices. So all of this may sound very complex and costly affair, but we are here, IBA is here to solve this problem, and we are here to offer a comprehensive solution. And we have two solutions here. One is managed by us, and other is can be managed by customers, right? So it is like hosted by IBM and another is hosted by customer. So first solution managed by us is called WebFOCUS Managed Cloud. It is a turnkey solution hosted and managed by IBM with absolutely no maintenance, zero maintenance at customer end. It is backed by award-winning customer support team who works 24/7, 365 days. And we offer flexibility, right? This solution can be seamlessly work on both AWS or Azure platform. So customer have flexibility to choose the platform and align best with their business needs. In case customer are looking to manage their own environment and want self-hosted solution, then we have IBM WebFOCUS Containerization. It leverages the same leading edge technologies for private cloud or on-prem, and it can also be integrated with your DevOps pipeline, CI/CD pipeline for faster deployment and upgrade and migration. So let's discuss this offering more in detail. So I'll first start with IBM WebFOCUS Managed Cloud. So as I mentioned, this solution is hosted and managed by IBM. It is ready to use product directly delivered to the customer. So as soon as customer purchases this solution, we provision a dedicated up and running WebFOCUS environment within 24 hours, and we delivered or we provide those details to customer and on their choice of platform, either AWS or Azure. And we not only help provision and configure IBM WebFOCUS software, but we also give flexibility to customize or configure critical parameters such as network, CPU, RAM, storage, and OS. It is based on customer's requirement. And as there is an inclination towards hybrid and multi-cloud strategies, as I discussed in the previous slide, market trends, we do support that. So in case customer want to connect to their databases, on-premise servers or other cloud platform, support team would help with the integration by creating a tunnel or a secure network to their databases. So that is pretty secured as well, right? As we are talking about security, we do configure and manage anti-malware protection and intrusion detection to keep environment more secure. And further, a customer can configure their SSO or IDPs of their choice. They can configure their LDAP so that they can use the same credential to log into their they can use their same credential of corporate network to log into the WebFOCUS environment. They can also configure identity and access management roles and security groups. So makes it pretty secure. Further, regarding the patches and updates, Managed Cloud applies and install all of the updates, not only for WebFOCUS product, but even for operating system or any pre-installed softwares on regular basis. There is a defined window to upgrade that, or if customer wants some flexibility, we do it outside maintenance window as well, based on requirement. And all of this process is automated, so pretty much reliable. And from compliance point of view, we do support industry compliances such as ISO, SOC 3, PCI for auditing and certification of data centers, policies and procedures. So it can be a compliant, trustworthy organization. From logging and monitoring point of view, we support industry standard logging and monitoring tools and it keeps check on the health check and delivers optimum performance. If customer needs these logs for their security compliance purposes, we can deliver these logs directly to their systems as well. And as I said, we have a monitoring in place, right? So we have tons of KPIs and we monitor CPU, memory, DBMS time, number of requests, user requests coming in. So we monitor performance from each and every angle and keep the infrastructure at optimum, and we extract the best performance out of our systems and with keeping the cost in check. And as I earlier said, we have the award-winning support team and SREs. They work 24/7, 365 days. So, and they are the single point of contact for any escalation request or streamline support experience, right? And they ensure almost 99.99% of uptime. And lastly, standard practice, like we do take automated backups using standard snapshot functionality at scheduled intervals. Even that window can be defined by customers. And we do offer restoring action as well, right, on demand. So these are pretty high level features of the Managed Cloud. I do have a whole other list on the next slide, but in the interest of time, I'll skip it. Anyway, we are going to share this presentation with you. So you can go through the list, and if you have any question, you can always connect to us. So let's move to the WebFOCUS Container Edition, right? So I'll discuss high-level features of it. So first we'll start with the platforms where it can be installed. So WebFOCUS Container Edition uses the same, again, leading edge technologies for private cloud and on-prem. And for that, we use the latest container orchestration technology called Kubernetes. But basically our containers images are built to run on any open container initiative that is OCI compliant runtime. So they are pretty flexible to run on any or most of the Kubernetes platforms. To name few, we support market leading AWS EKS, Google GKE, and Microsoft AKS, and even Red Hat OpenShift too. And again, similar to managed cloud, we do support hybrid and multi-cloud strategies as well. Pranay will cover why Kubernetes and how it works in more technical depth during his presentation. So we'll move to the next feature. So that is cost effectiveness. As I mentioned, one of the main reason for budget wastage is overpricing, right? So here we leverage the horizontal pod scaling. Usually it is called as HPA feature of Kubernetes. So here customer can define the minimum and maximum number of pods they want to scale based on the parameters like CPU, memory, etc. And they can scale up or down the pods or replicas based on the workload. But we are not using this feature as is. We have introduced custom metrics, which is a combination of CPU, memory, total request, failed parameters, or something like that. And based on that, we calculate a parameter called load index. It ranges between 0 to 1. And customer can define when they want to scale down, when they want to scale up, right? It can be like if your load index is below 0.3 for a certain interval, let's say 3 minutes, 4 minutes, you scale down. If your load index is more than 8 for 3-4 minutes, you scale up. So you can define that HPA strategy. It is flexible. So with that feature, it significantly saves infrastructure costs using autoscaling, and we call it infrastructure as code like IOC. Again, we have this cover in more detail from technical point of view. Pranay will show the demo, so he'll discuss that in more depth. So next feature is faster deployment. So WebFOCUS containerization can be deployed easily in 4 to 5 steps. So it can be seamlessly integrated with your automation and integration or CI/CD pipeline. So within minutes, customer can deploy their code and application from the lower environment to the production. So they can try it in lower environment, and if everything is good and fine, they can easily promote to the production, right? And this also helps upgrade or migration. It can be easily promoted to production, right? So it is pretty fast. So let's say within half an hour, you can have your environment up and running. Further, this product is pretty secure. We support air gap installation. If you're not aware what is air gap installation, it is nothing but a network where you're not exposed to unsecured network outside or such as public network or unsecured local area, right? Basically, you are within your company or enterprise network. So what we do is during air gap installation, customer has to install prerequisite softwares, and they can then disconnect from the public network. They can be in their network, and then they can install WebFOCUS containerization without any connectivity to outside world or unsecured network. So that makes it pretty secure. Further, we use the latest technologies, latest softwares. Currently, we include, or we have RHEL UBI 9.x OS. We started supporting Java 11. And even if we are using any third-party softwares or tools or APIs, what we do is we quickly fix the CVEs, and basically in WebFOCUS, every component is a separate image, right? So you can always take down that image, you can upgrade and rebuild the image, and your CVE is resolved, and you're again secured. There are other tons of features, but the few notables are like health check tool. It is kind of unique to us. So installation can get tricky at times, right? And when it is self-hosted solution, it is utmost responsibility at our end to support customers with installation and guide them with the process, right? And hence we have introduced this WebC health check tool. It can help with pre and post deployment checks and help troubleshoot issues if there are any, be it any user related permissions or policies, right? I'll have that cover in the next slide. It's a bigger topic. But next one, we always keep WebFOCUS on-premise and WebFOCUS containerization release cycles in sync to maintain feature parity. There is absolutely no feature gaps as such in the products. So if customer wants to migrate from on-prem to containerization, they can be pretty relaxed. They are not going to miss out on any feature. We have them covered. And lastly, we believe in open source tools and utilities, and we support them. And one such utility is Velero. So using Velero, customers can take scheduled and timely backups on regular basis or daily basis. And using the same thing, they can restore it as well, right? So never lose on the data and configuration. And again, it can be automated and it can be there included in your DevOps pipeline. So this is all about containerization. I'll take a pause and see if we have any questions, or we'll move to the next slide.
No questions yet. So yeah, feel free to type in the questions, everyone. We're happy to answer them.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's move to the next slide. So now I'll talk about WebFOCUS C health check tool. So as I said in previous slide, it can help with pre and post deployment checks and help troubleshoot issue. We bundle this utility in the installer itself, so it can be run from the same machine from where you are building the images or deploying, right? So this tool can be divided into 3 features or 3 parts. So first is before building images. So here user can this tool can check if user has the sufficient permissions to build images. If not, it will list down the permissions that are missing. Similarly, it can check for prerequisite software install like Helm, etc. It can give you errors, or it can help you install those softwares. And even the hardware requirements, like if there is no sufficient storage space, it will tell you like we need 20 GB of space, provide the space. Next is before deployment. So it helps you validate, again, prerequisite tool for that can be needed for deployment. It helps you validate local Helm files and remote Kubernetes cluster. It will verify if all the components are properly configured. Sorry, and it can also check if a user has all the permissions or to create or edit, delete pods. It can also validate image pool policies. Next is after deployment. So during deployment or after deployment, it can validate if WebFOCUS C in the if validates if WebFOCUS C is installed or deployed properly in the Kubernetes cluster. It ensures all the components are running up and running and confirm their connectivity among the components and all of that. So there are again lots of features, but there are a couple of instructions that are important. So first one is describe. So using this command, customers can check, or this utility can show overall health of the WebFOCUS C components running. It can show the usage there. And the second one is upgrade command. So it can be used to whenever if customer is looking to upgrade the setup, so it can check and validate configuration of the system policies and cluster environment if there are any potential upgrade issues. Excuse me. Let me take a sip of water. So I have explained this utility in very high level, but again, Pranay have this covered in actual demo. So let's move on to the next slide. So I'll walk you through the WebFOCUS journey so far. So as I previously said, we keep WebFOCUS and WebFOCUS C release cycle in sync. So here is the version history of WebFOCUS C. So we started in Feb 2022. We released WebFOCUS Containerization 1.0. As you can see, it is equivalent to WebFOCUS 9.0. So we started with the latest WebFOCUS client and reporting server, that is 9.0. And then we had further service packs starting from June 22, which were equivalent to WebFOCUS 902 and till 904. So there we started supporting air gap installation, deployment. We upgraded the third-party products like Apache Solar to 811.1. In October 22, we released 10111, which is equivalent to 911. We introduced WebFOCUS Health tool. We updated RHL 9.x, and recently we have released 120. And there we upgraded the health tool. We started supporting Java 11 and Apache Solar to 911. So you can see we have this product in sync. We time and time we keep upgrading a third-party solution or OS. So we make sure we resolve all the CVEs and we have up-to-date softwares to make it more secure. So before I conclude my presentation, I'll just revise or explain what is the IBI advantage if you go with us for cloud solution or our cloud offerings, right? So we have a strong relationship with all the leading cloud providers, be it Microsoft or AWS. With AWS, we have ISV Accelerate or AWS Advanced Technology Partner. We are a strategic partner that cover co-selling, marketplace, and technical and business development. Cloud Software Group, as a cloud software group, we have 30 products that run on AWS, and we are officially supported for deployment on AWS. Similarly, IBI is a Microsoft Gold Cloud Platform Partner and a Microsoft Silver Data Analytics, Silver Data Center, and Silver Application Integration Partner with strategic relationship that covers both technical and business deployment aspects. So be it hosted solution like WebFOCUS Managed Cloud or self-hosted solution like Containerized, we understand and we support customers every requirement, current requirement or future requirement. Whichever combination of product or services you need, we are here to support it. Our platforms are there to support it. Our platform empowers organization to turn data into actionable insight and generate meaningful business outcomes. Be it public or private cloud, hybrid cloud or multi-cloud strategy, we support that. And we also support migrate from on-premise to cloud. We have simplified deployment processes. We support faster deployments. We support HPA, horizontal power scaling. We resolve budget wasting issues, and we extract optimum performance out of the infrastructure, making it overall all the comprehensive solution cost effective as well. So our cloud high performance architecture delivers speed. They have simple admin policies. They are pretty flexible, they are more secure, and they provide connectivity to any data ecosystem, on-prem, multi-cloud, hybrid. So with this, I hope I have highlighted enough. I have your faith. I have gained your trust. So feel free to try out our products, give it a try, connect to our sales team or marketing team. We'll be happy to help you. And we'll hope to see you with IBI. So with that, I'll take a pause and we'll see if we have any questions on this. Otherwise, we'll hand it over to Pranay for the further session.
Yeah, still no questions. Quiet group today. But yeah, if anyone has questions, feel free to type them in. We'll definitely address them.
Maybe with that, we can hand it over to Pranay for the next session. Over to you, Pranay.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep, all good.
Good to go. My slides are on. Perfect. Okay.
Yep.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks, Sachin. It was great. So the section, what I'm trying to cover is basically after Sachin mentioned about the two options that you guys have. One is to run on the cloud managed by TIBCO or your own cloud, correct? Or running on your own data center or your own private cloud, correct? So that's what I'm going to cover. A little bit about me. My name is Pranay Shah. Been with TIBCO for many years. Currently managing the platform and DevOps group. Little bit of things about where we stand as a company and as myself. I've been part of TIBCO for almost 20 years, and now we're part of Cloud Software Group, and I'm working from, I was last 3 years for IBI. If I blurt it out TIBCO in some of the presentation, I think what I mean is really an IBI, correct? So it's just that it is part of the habit. Things is TIBCO never goes out of you. It's been 20 years. With that, let's get started. What are we learning today, or what are we going to see? So the first question is the question itself. Why are we containerizing, correct? And what's the advantage of containerizing, and how can it help you run your WebFOCUS on a cloud, on your own private cloud, or on the public cloud chosen by you? The next is what does it mean to deploy WebFOCUS Container Edition? What's the workflow, correct? How do you get bootstrapped? How do you get started? And so forth. The next, we're going to talk about a little bit about containerization, a little bit of intro of containers, a bit of deep dive in image building, how do we tackle that? Then the deployment. Once you have the images, how are you going to deploy them? How do we help you deploy to Kubernetes? And then the next topic is, one is the tool that Sachin mentioned, which is a WebFOCUS CE tool. We're very happy, and we just think this tool has just getting started. I think it has a great potential, but I'm going to give you a quick demos about what it can do today, and some of the insight in how you can get more information out of that. And the last but not least is the scaling. Basically, Sachin talked about something called HPA, the scaling for demand. I'm going to give you a quick demo about how it works. What's under the cover magic. How does we tell Kubernetes to decide to scale up or down WebFOCUS components? And we'll see a quick demo on that too. So let's get started. So very first question is, why do we containerize? And I'm sure some of you guys might have heard, oh, Docker plus Kubernetes is very difficult. Do we want to go that route? But at the same time, you might have also heard from your organization that, hey, we need to run everything on cloud, and the best option to run on cloud as of today is to run in containers, because it brings the whole sort of advantages. So I'm on the second part, which is the advantage of running in Container Edition. I have a whole set of a slide that I'm hiding it here because we don't have too much time. But when you get the slide deck, you will get even more detail about some of the points that probably what I've done it here is I created a small cheat sheet, correct, which I can talk through. The biggest advantage is once you containerize, you can run on something called Kubernetes, correct? And if you guys not heard about it, it's basically an orchestration, which is basically you guys have a lot of containers out there. Now you want some kind of a coach that gonna take the team and make a winning team, right? And in order for that, you need a good person, or a person or a coach who can go and utilize the best of each player. So with that in mind, I think, of course, once you get a containerized any software, it's portability, correct? And in this case, IBI gives you a software and the scripts and all the technology needed for you to containerize, correct? And we containerize on our side. We build an image containers, we test it out, we give you same recipe to you can try it out on your own cloud. At the same time, you can taken advantage of scaling, which is start small, you can grow as big as you want. Once you containerize, you don't have to worry about reconfiguring your software to scale up or down, correct? And at the same time, as one of the demo we're going to see is you can also scale on the demand, correct? So you don't have to worry about scaling. The Kubernetes underlying software will take care of scaling or shrinking at the same time. CI/CD, of course, you can now you can script out your entire deployment, and you can continuously repeat your steps with the new version, with the new patches, whatever, correct? So that's the standard in the industry for any software management or large scale software deployment. Security, of course, is very important to all of us, but mainly it's like no chatty neighbors. What I mean is basically if two applications is running on a same machine and somehow one application is compromised, or one application is just hogging all the resources, with the container, you can take care of all of those, correct? And there's beyond that, I'm just giving just a tip of the iceberg on the security. Flexibility, plug and play. So, you can run on your laptop and then take the same solution and run it on cloud or any Kubernetes setup, which is either on your on-prem or on the cloud. And of course, once you run on Kubernetes, as I said, Kubernetes is Kubernetes. And this is the most important thing if you want to remember out of Kubernetes is Kubernetes no matter where it runs. Of course, cloud provider brings their own secret sauce, their own nuances, so how they run. But at the end of the day, if you know how the thing runs on Kubernetes, you can pretty much run on, doesn't matter, is OpenShift or AKS, EKS, Google, your own Kubernetes, any of them, you will run, our scripts will run the same. And we have seen that principle or that idea stands true no matter what Kubernetes we run in. Of course, the version brings their own things, but it's with any software. But the point is the deployment, the way you manage, way you monitor, way you understand how things work. Once that knowledge has been acquired and you've been gained that enough expertise, you can pretty much then run on any Kubernetes out there. And above the most important step, which is mentioned here in the slide, is the ecosystem. The Kubernetes has this great ecosystem which has been continuously growing, and every day a new software, a new solution that comes out that solves some problem that somebody identified on Kubernetes. And so you don't have to worry about being only the person in the world that trying to tackle this platform. There are many other companies trying to do the same thing. That brings expertise, easy to acquire people who knows this thing, any training, so on and forth, correct? That's I would say handful of advantages that I can count. On top of that, some of the open source technology that we use, that we encourage our end users to use as well, as Sachin mentioned, something called Valero, which is for a backup and restore, a Linkerd, which is one of my favorite CNCF product, or the solution that came out of CNCF, which is Cloud Native Foundation, is this one-click mutual authentication enable, correct? That means you have many components in your software stack. You want to secure all that communication. You don't want to go and embed certificates in your containers and then be in the business of managing and rotating and whatnot. You want somebody else to do that. And Linkerd is like the service mesh, but the feature that I like most is the ability to secure all your endpoint inside your cluster. And it's just one click. You can, with the one command, you can turn it on, one command, you can turn it off, right? And then it takes care of all your rotation and everything for you. And then on top of that, it gives you then traffic overview as well. So you can actually see how your traffic is flowing and what components are loaded and whatnot. So it's a full stack service mesh that if you can imagine. And then the Prometheus and Helm are the two pieces of software that without that, containerization doesn't even stand up. We use Helm to do all the management. That's our software management tool. And Prometheus is something that is used it's probably optional if you really don't want to do a scaling. But when you're doing a scaling, when you want to Kubernetes to do a scaling for you, Prometheus is the integral part of the solution. It is the one that collects the metrics, keep track of how WebFOCUS is doing or any component in WebFOCUS tab, and use that information back to Kubernetes and then let Kubernetes make a decision that what should we do at that case? Should we scale up, scale down, or just hold steady? So those are, those are all the components I think that we do use. There are many more things that we've been playing with every day. So let's jump to the next topic, which is how are we doing, or what's our workflow, right? What do I need to do in order to get WebFOCUS CE running on my setup, right? Just a high level overview. Just a quick note, we are talking about two components here. So that we do have a WebFOCUS running in containerization, but at the same time, we have our data services, DSML science, metadata, all the services that comes with the data science team, which is part of WebFOCUS as well. They also can run in container. And there are two different tar files or two different software that you can download. But the logic or the learning stays the same, that you do pretty much the same way how you're going to do it on WebFOCUS containerization. So pretty much you can, if you want to do for WebFOCUS or you want to do it for DSML, the same learning will help you. So this is the high level workflow where we give you the tar file, you download it from our e-delivery site. The first thing you're going to do is build your Docker images, correct? And this is where you containerize all the WebFOCUS component. given by the Docker files given by us. It starts to build Docker images. It does need an internet connection, and after that, it's you don't need to have internet connection. Then it could be everything in your private cloud, which is what the air gap, what Sachin was explaining in previous slides. Next, of course, you want to deploy this thing. So we give you Helm file, and you use Helm tool to deploy everything to your cluster. Now, this cluster could be anything. Could be running on your laptop, could be running on the cloud, could be running on your local cloud. So we do give you a little bit of switches in order to figure out what's your target Kubernetes size. It's just all about sizing, correct? So because on your laptop, you're not going to have a big machine. So we give you different kind of a setting that accommodates laptop setting or even your dev setup. But it at the end of the day is just a little bit of switch in the files that you use that decides how you're going to deploy. Pretty much the deployment stays the same, and we'll go in detail pretty soon. I just have one note here for Kubernetes that is greater than 1.25. So if some of you guys download latest Kubernetes and try it out, if our steps, you might see an issue where the default way of Kubernetes before 1.25 was that it can see the Docker images sitting on your local machine. This is mainly for when you're doing stuff on your laptop. It will see them natively, correct? But now with the 0.25 or 1.25 onward, they said they will not see them natively. So basically, they don't support Docker runtime natively. So you need to do an extra step to either use a newer runtime that they bring, same images. You don't have to rebuild your images. You just have to do one extra step. So I just want to bring that up. If you guys are going to try it out after this session, and you might, if you download latest Kubernetes, you might not. If you just follow this step, you might have an issue. So just keep that in mind. The next is, of course, you're gonna just not keep your setup running on your laptop, correct? You build your Docker images, you want to push it, you want to store them in some central registry where then everybody in your company or the entire ops team can get hold of that. Same applies to your charts or the Helm file, the scripts that we give you for deployment. You want to probably commit into some Git, and you want to have some GitLab or Jenkins or any of that automation do a continuous integration deployment into your Kubernetes, correct? So that's pretty much what this slide is saying. And then the extra thing that shows up here in this slide is, once you do your first deployment, you might realize, oh, I need a SQL Server JDBC driver, or I need some driver, or I need some extra files, some extra library that I need for WebFOCUS to run because I use WebFOCUS different way. You might want to go and customize Docker images to have that software already loaded in that. So you might customize it. You build it again, your CI/CD will pick it up saying, okay, I see a new images, I'm going to do a deployment, and it will go and upgrade your cluster or update your cluster to run with a new piece of software. So now talking in the future, correct? This is something that we are planning to do in future. And you might just say, hey, IBI, why don't you just build a Docker images for me, put it in some public registry, which I can get hold of as a customer, and pull it from there, correct? And that's something that we are planning to do. As of now, it's on a horizon that we probably want to do it. But in that case, the workflow will pretty much remain the same, except that you don't have to do a build. You might still customize your image because you can add stuff on top of it and then store it locally, or you just use one that is provided by IBI and your deployment just simply uses them. On top of that, we can even go further one step, which is where we can just say, hey, you know what? We can even ship our charts on a GitHub repo, a private or a public GitHub repo that you guys can get hold of all the charts from there. And then your CI/CD is pulling the charts. Charts, again, when I say charts, scripts, deployment, they're all recipe for you to how to deploy a WebFOCUS component, because you need to do in certain order. We do certain stuff to set it up in a Kubernetes cluster. So you want to use the scripts provided by us. All that can be actually now coming from a public Git repo, and just you just pull those. So in that case, we don't even need to give you installer, correct? But again, this is something in the future. We are thinking about it. Just wanted to give you a preview of that. Next topic about image building. So like a quick intro to Docker and how all this thing works. Just a little side trip about how all this thing works when you do containerize, correct? So let's take a quick example of you have a WebFOCUS application, you have an IBI application, and you want to containerize and you want to run in container. How do we do that? You take an IBI application, you write something called Docker file. Now, the good news is we do give you a Docker file, and what is in the Docker file is basically how you're going to build your Docker image. What it means. So when you do a Docker build, we start to build something called Docker image. Okay, it's a container image. Just to be in generic term. The very first thing we do is we start to embed operating system inside it. It's a very lightweight operating system. We pull from the internet. It's something called Red Hat UBI. This is where the internet connectivity comes into picture. So if you don't have internet connectivity, it might not work. Once we do that, of course, you're gonna need some kind of a tooling, which is you need some Python, Java, some tools, that's Git, anything that you need for your software to run. We start to install that. We already have it hard coded in our scripts. Of course, then we start to put applications. So we start to copy the WebFOCUS application. So if you see the tar file that you get from TIBCO, it comes with a WebFOCUS software embedded in it, but they are all in the tar format. So because, we don't need to have it unzipped in the tar within a tar. We take that tar file that has the WebFOCUS components, we start to copy them into the image. At that time, we do untar it. And that's when you will see all your familiar folder structure that you've been aware for the WebFOCUS. Last but not least, we do put configuration. So it's a default configuration that is just bare minimum enough to figure out what's inside the container or what is there, right? Technically, you could, so that's done. So the image building is done. Technically, you can put some commands that can run the software that's inside the container. But for most cases, in the WebFOCUS case, they are not ready to be run right away. The images are there, and I'll show you exactly what does that mean. But point to be keep in mind, if you build a Docker image and you just want to run an ADA server or reporting server without Kubernetes, it's not going to happen. So I'll tell you what exactly happens during the installation. But we use this images, we configure certain stuff. There is stuff to be stored in a cluster, and then your WebFOCUS software comes up. Now again, so after building a Docker images, you tag it so you can identify your images, you can document, you can tell exactly what's inside this image, because it's a blob, it's a big binary data. So unless you do a good documentation on the image itself, you don't know what is inside it, correct? So all the labeling and everything is very important. We take care of that, but you are free to add more labels on top of it. And all this is compiled or combined or built using something called OCI compliant spec. And I'll come to that, why that's so important. This can be done using Docker or build.ah. So usually Docker build.ah is an additional tool or one more tool or equivalent tool, I would say, than Docker, which is kind of a daemonless way of doing building in Docker images. It's mainly built by Red Hat. Unfortunately, it uses a different kind of a structure to build Docker image. In sense, it needs a different kind of instructions. Docker has Docker files, they have their own script. So it's just, we might have to rewrite the entire script if you want to use build.ah. But the point I'm trying to bring here is both of them at the end of the day generate an image, which is something called OCI compliant. So that is most important thing to remember. The next thing you're going to do is you want to run, correct? Now you got your container, it's not running it. So when you start to run it, it's actually the one that runs your software. So for an analogy, if you know your programming, the image is your Java class or a class. And when you run that image, it becomes a container, and that's an instance of that Java class, correct? And you could have many instances running. So that's when all the software starts to run. The operating system comes up. It uses the kernel from the host, and it starts to run your software. Of course, when you run the software, you're going to need some kind of a database connectivity. It might connect to some configuration server to download some information, and it might store some information for the persisting beyond the container. Because keep in mind, containers are ephemeral. That means they can be killed or die anytime. Your software should not care about it. Everything should be persisted outside. And this is exactly the reason where I said our containers are not ready to run right away after you build your Docker images. There is a whole lot of a setup that we need to know. We need to know where to store configuration, all the stuff that we're going to rely on that is going to be persisting beyond the life of a container, correct? So again, taking a bit of digression here, but the containers versus your on-prem software, Your on-prem software is your pets. You name them, you nurture them, you make sure they live forever where containers are hurt. You don't care. There are millions of them running. You don't name them. You don't know where they're running, how they run. You only know is that they're going to run your software. If they die, the new one will take place and it'll run exactly the same way. So that's the change in the mentality or paradigm shift. Of course, you're going to open up the connectivity so your end users can connect to it, all that good stuff. Now, as I said, you want to run them in some kind of an orchestration software, which is a Kubernetes, which is a de facto by nowadays. And the thing is that what I'm trying to show here is that Kubernetes can decide to run your containers using different CRI. CRI is nothing but a container runtime interface or engine. I'm throwing a lot of terms, words, phrases, or acronyms out here. Don't worry, when you get the slide, there is a glossary of terms, all of them described. So don't worry about taking any notes on that. You will have all of them documented part of the slides. Going back to CRI, Kubernetes nowadays don't use Docker, as I just said a few slides ago. They use something called Containerd. And the reason they could have switched this is because all the images that they pull is something it's compiled or built using something called OCI. And that's why as long as any runtime that can read this OCI compliant image can run your container. Most of the time, you don't have to worry, actually, and we don't care. We've been testing it with the newer Kubernetes, OpenShift that uses something called Cryo. EKS still use Docker, but doesn't matter. It pretty much runs the same way as long as we build the image in a compliant way. And the thing is, as we speak, there is way more development or advancement happening in Kubernetes world on the CRI side. Everybody is coming up with their own secret way or own their proprietary way of running containers even more efficiently, even more secure way. So that's where the most advancement is happening. And once you run on Kubernetes, you can exploit all that advantages just by running on Kubernetes. So again, the one more point of running on Kubernetes is that you can take an advantage of all this new advancement as it comes, correct? Because at the end of the day, we all want to run our software and the entire stack more securely. So with that, let's jump to what all runs in a container, correct? A bit of deep dive into image building. Tell us a little bit about all the components that runs in a WebFOCUS. How do we build images out of those or for them? Questions? I don't see so far any, but yeah, feel free to type it up or send us later as well. Now we are all here to talk about WebFOCUS, right? We love a WebFOCUS. We know it's a great software which allows you to harness your data. It's all about data and visualizing the data and building reports, pushing that reports to user or users coming and rendering that chart. This is one such chart that shows about the retail sales data. Now, idea is this is great. WebFOCUS works, but we want to run in the container or you want to run on a cloud. I want to run on my own cloud. Okay. How do I run it? For that, we need to take a side trip on what all makes WebFOCUS, correct? What are all the components are in the WebFOCUS that makes WebFOCUS? So it's a big slide, but let's ignore for now, let's take a right-hand side, which is the database and the browser out of the picture, correct? Because those two are something that's not in your hand. But what I want to show you here is those are the things that actually makes the WebFOCUS what is WebFOCUS at the end, correct? Without your data and without the user who wants to use it, why do you need WebFOCUS, correct? But the point is, let's not worry about those because that's not something we control. What we control here, all this component on the screen, correct? This is what makes WebFOCUS, which is there's a reporting server, there is this cluster manager, which can manage multiple of reporting server. There is an application server that is a front end for WebFOCUS, Reportcaster, which is a scheduling tool that can schedule your reports and send emails to users as via email or FTP or any of the format that you want, so that users don't have to come to actually WebFOCUS GUI to get your reports. There is a cache manager that is used for helping the reporting server do its reporting much efficiently. And last few components, you see there is Zookeeper and Solar. There is a repository, which is a repo, and etcd. Now, Zookeeper and Solar is for your search all your search data when you are searching in your in WebFOCUS Hub. That's all done through Solar. Repository is essential piece of software, which is your database for your app server, which is all your users and everything gets stored. And HCD might be a new component that you might have not seen is, but when you run a CLM more than one, now in 9x, all the configuration is stored in some kind of a key pair values database, which is HCD in our case. And the last piece at the bottom is this our DSML functionality, which is all our AI stuff, ML stuff, where all your you're using all your data analytics and all the great data Python functionality or Python microservices that we have. They all run in container as well, right? So about that, what all run in container? And the answer is everything that you see here runs in a container, correct? Each of them run in its own container, except one thing. I will come to that. But the good news is, or the answer is, everything that you WebFOCUS has can run and will run in a container. Now, with the containerization, there's a little bit of decisions that we have to make for you, which is without that, we can't narrow down the container solution easily, because otherwise there's too many possibilities that we have to go and satisfy. The very first thing is, how are they going to run? They're going to run on Linux operating system, and it's a Red Hat UBI. It's I would say it's the OS that we run in a container, and we've been running it from last 4 to 5 years in many different TIBCO piece of software, and we've been very happy with that. It's the lightweight. It has it's been always been kept up to date, so no CVEs issues and all those things. There are other OSs that we could have picked. We could have picked Alpine, we could have picked Ubuntu, but we just happened to finalize on this. Next is app server. Of course, app server can be a Jetty or a Tomcat. We decided to use Jetty. Postgres database, which is your repo server. Again, that's optional. You don't have to use the one provided by us, but it's listed here because if you use the script, let's say you want to deploy everything on your laptop and you need a database. When you do use our script, it will be a Postgres database. So that's something to keep in mind. You could have been Darby. We just went with the Postgres. HCD for CLM storage. So that's for storing the data for CLM. And Solar for search. In this case, since you're running in container or you might run in the cloud, we decided to use Solar Cloud. That means it has built-in Zookeeper built-in inside it. So Zookeeper is the one who keeps track of Solar and makes sure Solar is running and all the good stuff. Last but not least is Prometheus, which is not shown here, is one that is there for collecting your metrics, correct? So you need some way to keep track of how your application is doing, monitoring and all good stuff. That's done through Prometheus. With that, let's focus on this 5 components that makes really the WebFOCUS what is WebFOCUS is, correct? And how does the image get built? Now with that, we need to go to the image building, but I want to take one more short trip or a digression, which is let's double click into what does the tar file has. If I get a tar file from IBI, if I untar it, what am I going to get, correct? What you get is this untar folder, and the very first few files you see is your documentation, so all the good stuff about how to get started. The next is a script, build images.sh. This is an Uber script that calls all other Docker files, and it does build on that. So we need a Docker images to run WebFOCUS Container Edition. This script will do and build all your images for you, and we'll have a quick look into that. Next is you want to deploy it. So there is a Helm file folder. Inside that you will find a Helm file.yaml, and there is an infra folder which has also one more Helm file.yaml. These are the 2 YAML file. With the Helm file tool, we'll put the entire WebFOCUS software on the Kubernetes. So this is very important for deployment. We'll look into that as well. Second last stuff, I would say the version.properties file. As Sachin was mentioning, there are different versions of WebFOCUS Container Edition. If you find out which version you are running, you want to look at this file. And the last one is the entire WebFOCUS software. It's all in tar format. We don't touch it. They're just there. They used during image building. This tar file gets copied into container, untar, and all the good stuff. So building the Docker images. So you're going to go and execute this build image.sh file. That's going to start building your Docker images. So it builds one image at a time, needs internet connectivity, pulls the operating system, pulls Java, puts WebFOCUS software and everything, all good stuff. Now you see there are a bunch of environment variables that got exported at beginning of this image building. This is something that you might want to change or you might not change, but this is how you identify. Probably you want to add your own words or your own key terms about this Docker images, correct? Because Docker images are identified using tags. You could have multiple tags. We decided to use certain tags, but you are free to go and change it. It's there is one script that actually exports your environment variable. Documentation mentions that. But basically it reads that environment variable, exports it, and then start to use that to build or add a tag on the Docker images. So something to keep in mind. But let's say that's done. What happens? Now you get this 5 images on your machine, correct? And you might think that, oh, there are 5 containers. Those 5 images are for them, correct? In reality, actually, they are not the one. So I color coded them so for us to easily identify which one who is using what. So we can see the cluster manager and reporting server are actually using an image called WFS 9.2 version. Application server reportcaster uses something called WFC with some version. Cache manager has its own image called CM-9.2, but there are 2 more images that are not used, correct? So why are we building it, Pranay? One is WFS ETC and one is Postgres Alpine, correct? So one of them, so if you remember, or if you know WebFOCUS a bit in deep, is WebFOCUS, when you install, it's a huge piece of software which has a lot of static content. We have taken that static content and put it into an extra image, which its job is to only during the installation come up, we can copy everything from that Docker image and put it in some shared volume that has all the static content. So what I'm trying to say is that image is only used during installation time. The stuff is copied from there into a shared volume, and then that image is not used. Same thing happens to a Postgres Alpine, which is kind of a tool. There are a bunch of tools that we need for doing deployment. One is to connect to repository database to insert all the users, inserting sample data samples so that you have some samples to play with. Zookeeper Solar needs some kind of a schema for searching. We need to import that schema into Solar. All that is done using this Postgres Alpine, and that also is not run during the runtime. So why am I sharing this? Is that you might get confused that, hey, why these images are not there? I don't see them in my cluster. Nobody's using them. That's the answer for that. Second is, if you find any issues with any of these images, we are there to manage it and maintain it, correct? So we will give you the image files that are blessed, almost free of vulnerability, because you never know. Once we ship the image and you take it, there could be something you identified. But the idea is, for some reason, if you identify stuff in the ETS, WFS ETC or a Postgres Alpine, and it's probably something that is only part of that image, something to keep in mind is they're not running in production. So, or they're not running in your cluster. So you might want to be rest assured that, okay, fine, that's if they have an issue, it's not a big deal. But if any of your containers or images that are actually running your WebFOCUS stuff, you want to be very vigilant about, they should be as free of vulnerability as possible, because we are all keeping eye on security nowadays. So that's done with the image building. Now let's do, how do we deploy all these images? So you got the images. I am excited. I want to go and now start to put together WebFOCUS. How do I do that? Correct. So again, let's recap of what we learned so far. So we download the tar file from IBI. You run something called a build images. This gives you, you use this script to build it. That does what? It gives you 5 Docker images, correct? Or container images. What you're going to do is you're going to now push them into some kind of a registry. Now, if you are doing it locally, you don't need to do it. As I said, it's fine. But most probably the next step is you're going to deploy it onto your local cluster or your cloud, Kubernetes running on your cloud, correct? Or a Kubernetes running on any of your data center. For that, you need to basically push these images to some central repository, because then all the machines in your cluster want, you don't want to manually copy all these containers one by one to each of those machines. You want to get pulled from one central repository. So that's called registry, container registry. There are many out there, free ones, paid ones. You could even be using something that's available on SaaS, pushing images there. That's all fine. That's done. Now, next step is something called a deployment, correct? So you want to deploy it. And for deployment, what you need the Helm file, the scripts that we give you. So you could copy it into the deployment server, or you can copy it into a Git, and then deployment server pulls it from the Git or some kind of a version control. Next, you're going to need a Kubernetes cluster. In this case, I'm just showing 3-node cluster. The first thing you're going to do is, and of course, having a cluster is one thing, but on the deployment server, you need a connectivity to that cluster as well. That means there should be a kube config that kubectl uses now most of the time, that is actually connecting to your cluster. So you need to have a Docker images built, you need to have a scripts ready. Probably you have done all your configuration. You can use default configuration, but you want to do it beforehand. You have a cluster and you have a kube config that is has a connectivity and the correct role or a user configured in for the cluster. You're good to go. Now, what you're going to do, you're going to go to that Helm file folder, and you're going to go inside the infra, and you're going to run a Helm file sync. What does that do? That deploys all the dependencies for WebFOCUS to come up. In this case, we need a repository server, Solar, Zookeeper, all that good stuff, Prometheus, all gets deployed during the infra phase. Once that is done, you're going to go one directory up, and you're going to run Helm file sync again. And this will basically start to put, now, this is where your decision making comes into picture, where you can say, are you deploying toward your laptop where you need probably a small setup, or you're deploying on a cloud, correct? So you pick, you just don't run Helm file sync. You can say Helm file -e dev sync. What is that exactly? Probably if I have time, I'll cover that. But in short, what does it do is it basically calls a different set of configuration, or it uses different set of configuration to a deployment. So let's say you did that. What happens next? So we start to put up a new set of volumes. That means we are creating a storage for us inside the Kubernetes cluster, where we can now store all our stuff. If you remember, there is this big image called WebFOCUS etc. We need to copy that into the storage. All that good stuff happens during the deployment type. Then we start to put WebFOCUS components. Then we start to add the services for the WebFOCUS, all the WebFOCUS component to talk to each other, ingress, so that you can access the app server and your users can start using it, or you can start to administration of WebFOCUS itself. So that's pretty much it. This is how you're going to get your cluster going. Now let's look at deployment bit in detail. So what happens, or how do you do it? Since that was a bit old, I would say old way of staying. We have added more stuff on top of it, like just to make your life easy. As Sachin said, it can get a bit complex times. So what does that mean? This 4 piece of advice or 4 piece of step that you're going to need is going to be there for either running on a Kubernetes on the cluster locally, or on the cloud. The first thing you do is you use this WebFOCUS CE tool that we have given you with the newer version, and you do a pre-deploy test. And what this does is basically it uses all your configuration. So your Helm files, all the settings, the connectivity to Kubernetes cluster on your deployment server, and connects to deployment server, or connects to Kubernetes, and does all the tests for you. And then it comes back saying, looks good to go for deployment. And that's a great peace of mind that now the deployment is going to succeed. So this one, now you follow with the infrastructure creation using Helm file sync, and then they follow by the WebFOCUS card creation as well. And last but not least, you want to see if everything got deployed properly. You could do this after 5 minutes of deployment, 5 hours of deployment, or 5 days, correct? You want to check if everything is running. You can use WebFOCUS CE tool, do an actual check on your deployment, and see everything is running what it should be. All of this should be using the exact same settings that you use for deployment. So if you use -e dev for doing the deployment, so then the WebFOCUS CE tool for the post deployment should also use that same flag. Something to keep in mind. This slide just says that we do test all our versions of WebFOCUS containerization against all this, Kubernetes that's available out there, EKS, GKE, AKS, OpenShift. So as I said in the beginning, the script stays exactly same. There's no change to them. It's just that we do deployment, but there is a different way of doing a deployment. So something to keep in mind. Basically, there are different way of creating a storage, correct? So that's something that we have seen that's the most challenge people run into. Deployment cheat sheet, let me just quickly go over that. If somebody says, give me just the cheat sheet, what I need to do, you export your environment variable. This is the tags for your images. You just telling this deployment what exactly you tag them as. You run a pre-deployment check. You run the Helm file sync from the infra. Then once that is done, you go one directory up and you run Helm file sync for the actual deployment, and then you do a post-deployment check. Now, if you use a different flag for deployment, then you need to use different flag or the same flag for your post-deploy check. And for that matter, you need to do the same flag for your pre-deployment check, something to keep in mind. With that, so here we just a quick demo about how the WebFOCUS get deployed. I'm just showing you what all pods gets created. This is basically pods are nothing but a container running your WebFOCUS stuff. When you run the Helm file sync from infra, you are seeing here the Postgres, Solar, all that gets created. We are populating all the good stuff in the data in the cluster. You can keep an eye on the timer, how long it's going to take to deploy. Now I'm running a Helm file -e dev sync, which is going to actually deploy the WebFOCUS stuff. On the right hand side, you're seeing amount of Helm charts are getting added to the cluster, right? And now you can see, we started some component, the cache manager has come up, but we are doing a couple of init stuff. So this is where the actual configuration is happening. Going back to my point of the containers cannot run by itself. There is a lot of configuration that needs to happen, a one-time task that needs to run during the setup, and that's all happening. You can see the ADA server has come up. The init config is going on, which is populating the samples in a database for reporting server to use so that you guys can run some chart. That pretty much should get complete pretty soon. Once that is done, the ADA server comes up, and then the last but not least is the app server, which is the front end for your WebFOCUS. Once that is done, pretty much the deployment is done. The last thing we do after that, almost last thing, is we run a smoke test, which is basically just making sure all the components that got deployed are working or not. They make a couple of API calls to say, okay, all the connectivity came back, the response looks good. So that's deployment. I have got 10 minutes. So we're going to do two more demos quickly. One is WebFOCUS CE tool. As I said, it's a kind of a multi-tool. We're going to keep enhancing this tool to do more and more stuff. What does it do? It allows you to check if your machine is good for deployment, for Docker build. It allows you to check if the deployment is going to succeed, allows you to check if the deployment has succeeded. And the last one is, as of today, is it allows you to collect all the information about your cluster as well. So this is something very good for if you want to just collect stuff, we want to open a support ticket, or yourself, you want to just do some kind of a documentation about what all is running in the cluster. This is a good command to use. Talking about where all should you use this tool. One is before you build a Docker images. One is before you do a deployment. Very important to do that. And the last, if you really want to check if everything got deployed, or even after, like as I said, 5 minutes or 5 hours, you want to see if everything is running. Just manual check. Of course, you could probably do a lot of automation on monitoring, but if you want to just see everything is running what it should be, you should be able to run after post deployment as well. So here is a quick demo about the tool. It's very simple, very easy to use. You do a WebFOCUS CE check that does a quick check on the tool itself. You can do a ---- help that gives you a lot of commands or all the commands that you can use. Here I'm doing WebFOCUS CE check on a build, which means can I do a Docker build, and it checks yes, Docker is running, you have internet connectivity, you have enough disk space and all that. If the tool succeeds, it returns with the error code of 0 or an exit code of 0. So you can use that part of your automation to continue doing your CI/CD stuff. Next, this one I'm doing a pre-deploy check. I'm using -e-dev because I'm going to do deployment on my laptop. So now it uses my kube config. It uses all the WebFOCUS configuration, starts to create stuff or starts to check in the cluster if everything is going to be, if everything is good, what it should be. It also checks that no WebFOCUS component should persist there. It could be that you have done one deployment that failed, you cleaned it up, and you're doing again. At that time, you want to make sure you're starting with a clean cluster again. And it does basically some sudo deployments as well to make sure that everything is running fine. For some reason, you want to see what exactly it's doing, you can run the same command with verbose. So in this case, it gives you a whole lot of information, or exactly information, I would say, about what exactly it's doing. So if you want to get an insight in each of the check, you can use with verbose, and this gives you a way more information than you want, I would say. So mainly it's for troubleshooting purpose, but feel free to use that to get a real insight in what exactly we are doing. Last, post deploy check. So this is where the deployment is done, and I ran the check. In this case, the deployment check fails. Why? Because I didn't use -e-dev profile. So it says, hey, for me, the way it should be, the storage should be using certain different kind of settings, but it does not look like, so the test fails. But if I rerun it with -e-dev, which is what I should have been used, then the test does succeed in that case. So basically what I'm trying to show here is that make sure you remember what flags you have used during the deployment. Now in the future, we might say, hey, can you guys detect this automatically? And we might. So we can connect to your cluster and figure out what exact setting you had used, and we run the test accordingly. That's something we are working on. So that concludes the CE tool demo. Last but not least is scaling for capacity. How does this HPA comes and picture, and how does it help you? Correct. So what exactly it's doing? Correct. So the scenario is you have a reporting server. You have, I'm just showing only the few pieces of component that are interesting here. Is you have the entire WebFOCUS setup. You set it up for 3 concurrent users. I'm just making it up. But you can say that current setting is good for 3 concurrent users. They can come and load any kind of a chart, and they will see a good performance, which is good. But and how does Kubernetes know that that's actually good? Correct? Like Kubernetes is continuously monitoring your component, and how does it know that the current state is good? The way it does is it uses something called horizontal pod autoscaler and custom metrics. So the way it starts is Kubernetes sends a request to HPA. HPA sends request to this something called Prometheus adapter, and Prometheus adapter is sending request to ADAS server. Now, what all is this thing? So Prometheus is the component that keeps polling ADAS server for every 15 seconds to collect some metrics, and it takes that matrix, tabulates that matrix, and keeps it ready for HPA to make a call on it. So how does this metric looks like? And we send a whole lot of metrics information, as Sachin was saying, so you can get an insight in all the aspect of WebFOCUS. But the one of the metrics that we are interested today is something called system running average, or average load index ratio. It's a mouth handful. But this is something that tells Kubernetes, and this is a custom matrix, which is what I was mentioning, is this is what tells Kubernetes that the reporting server is doing okay. And the values are from 0 to 1. So 0 means it's like no load, 0.8, 0.28 is like, okay, it's just somewhat of load. 0.5 is where the server is getting really busy and you want to do something about it, correct? Because you want to react in a time where you don't degrade the performance too much. But again, at the same time, you don't want to do it too aggressively where you start to add more component and there's just more noise than actually doing the real work. So this data goes back to Prometheus adapter. Prometheus adapter takes that, makes it available to HPA. HPA says, okay, this is good, but the current data is below the threshold and I'm not going to do anything. And you can actually query for that, correct? So once the data is tabulated, you can run a query on the kubectl, says get HPA, and actually you can see ADAS server, the one that is highlighted. The value comes in a multiplication of 100. So 0.28 multiplied by 100 is what is shown here. So you can see that 280 is the value for the current load. and 500 is what my threshold is set, that beyond that, I want to make a call to scale up. Now, it does not scale up right away. It sees the load and it waits for 2 minutes to load to stabilize. So that means it wants a persistent value beyond 500 for next 2 minutes. Then it makes a call saying, I need to scale, and it starts to add the component. And let's see that in action. So scenario is suddenly the load went up, a lot more users are logging in, and the WebFOCUS app server is getting busy. And the test here is all the 6 charts that get loaded. They are all taking a lot of CPU from the app server or reporting server, and there are a lot of users asking for this chart. So the CPU is going to get really busy really fast. So this is a quick demo where on the top right, on the top left corner, we are tracking the HPA. The second one is actually all the events that HPA is logging. The last on the left hand side is all the CPU usage of all the pods in WebFOCUS. On the left hand side, you see a top of a machine itself. You can see the CPU is not so busy as of now. And the last one is the load average actually emitted by reporting server to Prometheus. You can see the load is 0.46, looks fine. You can see the HPA is sitting on it. It's saying load is good. I don't need to do anything. Keep an eye on the clock. You will see within a few seconds the load coming up, and then you will see the top will detect that right away. Correct. So you can see the top is showing 62% CPU usage. Correct. So the load is going up. The reporting server does not. I mean, it starts to emit the load has gone up, but it is also a rolling window. So it is saying how is the load doing in last few minutes, and then a rolling window, the number slowly gradually growing up. Since I'm speeding up, you can see the numbers going up pretty fast, but you will see that it does not react super fast, and that's a good thing because you don't want to keep adding stuff really fast. 2 minutes has passed. You keep an eye on replica. Soon that goes to 2. And you can see the message also printed on the HPA says, oh, the metrics what I was monitoring has passed the threshold, and it's been 2 minutes. I'm gonna scale up. And you can see on the I think the video has looped, but you could have seen the 2 ADA server coming up, and that's exactly what happens. The 2 reporting server came up. Since CLM is there, CLM knows there are 2 reporting server. It lets the app server know about that. Now app server starts to do a load balance between those 2 reporting server, and hopefully within a 4 to 5 minute, user starts to see much better performance. So there is a little bit of degradation, but that's okay. System is reacting to it. You have a full control on all this. So if you want to play with it, you want to react fast, it's all in your hand. Same is true for going down as well, correct? Because you want to save your cost if your load is not so high at this. So same reverse logic comes into picture where we wait for 5 minutes. If the load is not up for 5 minutes, is consistently below 500, after 5 minutes, ADA server, reporting server or HPA makes a call, let's scale down. It goes back to whatever is the minimum required. And that way you don't have to pay for additional capacity. And the way Kubernetes works is it can auto add more machines. So it might have added more machine as it needed more capacity. Now it's going to take that capacity back and it's going to remove those machines. That way it doesn't get billed on your account. So that concludes all my slides. As I said, there are the glossary at the end of this slides. You will get that. So feel free to read about if any of the terms were not familiar, but that's about it. Thanks a lot. And I hope this is going to help you on your cloud journey.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Pranay. Any final questions? I know we're at our time. Any final questions? Okay. If there's no final questions, just as a reminder, again, guys, you will receive a copy of the recording and the presentations from the presenters. I will be sending out a link to the evaluation form. So if you guys would take a moment to please fill that out for us, it'd be greatly appreciated. And if there's no further questions, then we will let you guys go, and we will talk to you next month at our June virtual user groups.